Was your father an astronomer?
No, my father wasn't an astronomer. My father, well, it's strange again, because my father was actually an archaeologist. And, I probably reacted in exactly this way of saying, well, I'm not going in that direction. So, that's the humanities, so I went to the sciences. But actually, astronomy and archaeology, looking back on it, are really very closely connected with each other. We're both doing the same thing. Astronomy is not really a proper science. We spend our time picking up the fragmentary evidence that there is out there and trying to put that together to figure out, what's happened, what's gone on. Of course, that's exactly the same thing that archaeologists do. They spend their careers peeking over the fragmentary evidence they have and trying to use that to figure out how whatever it was of the ancient civilization was put together. So actually, although I probably tried to set off in a completely different direction from my father, I've ended up doing rather similar things. Well, actually, what I do in astronomy is quite often referred to these days as galactic archaeology too, which also makes me smile somewhat. But yes, because it really is, it's looking at galaxies as they are today and trying to look for the sort of hidden clues in the way they are today as to how they were put together. So yes, it really is a very archaeological kind of thing I do.
What did he do?
So he had two main specialisations. The thing he's probably best known for is that he was an expert on Roman London. So he was a specialist in Roman London, spent a lot of his career documenting the way that London was set up by the Romans and the history of it through the Roman period. But then the other thing he's known for is he wrote a book called The Archaeology of Ritual and Magic, in which he was really one of the first people to advance this idea that not everything in archaeology has a rational explanation, that some things are just done for ritual reasons rather than for sensible reasons. And so, for example, a classic example is if you take an old house to bits, you'll quite often find under the floorboards or up a chimney an old shoe. And the explanation used to be, well, somebody lost a shoe as they were building the house, right? But that's silly, right? If a workman if a workman's shoe fell off, he's not going to leave it there. What my father pointed out is that there's probably something ritualistic about putting an old shoe up a chimney or under the floorboards as a way of sort of protecting and casting a spell over the house. And of course, at the time, this was very much contrary to the culture, that archaeologists really wanted rational explanations for things. But if you now watch any program about archaeology on television or any popular thing on archaeology, it's always, nowadays, it's the explanation for everything, right? Or it's ritualistic. And so he was really the father of that as well. Another classic example is dogs down wells. Right? Again, archaeologists really like wells, right? Because things get dropped down wells. And so if you can excavate a well, you kind of have this sort of history of the lifetime of the well, of everything that fell down it. And often what you find is at the top of the well, when it's the last layers before it was closed up as well, you'll find a dog skeleton. And again, the rationalist explanation for this is, well, dog fell down the well, and then the water probably didn't taste very good, and so at that point you close up the well. But again, there's a nice sort of ritualistic explanation, which is when you finish with a well, maybe what really happens is, well, you want to make sure that nothing nasty kind of comes up from the underworld. So you want to guard the exit from the underworld. And so you sacrifice a dog as a way of sort of guarding the exit from the underworld as part of your ceremony of closing down the well.
What your father did obviously involved a kind of thinking outside the box in quite a non-scientific way in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Surely that doesn't apply to your work. Surely you don't look at the morphology of a galaxy and think about some traditional humanistic intervention, do you?
No, not in the same way, no, but good archaeology, good science, a lot of it is about thinking outside the box. You can keep plugging away and making these little incremental steps, but if you want to make these paradigm shifts, if you actually want to change people's attitudes completely from everything has a rational explanation to actually maybe some things have a ritualistic explanation, you've got to be thinking outside the box, because if you just keep thinking along the same lines as everybody else, you'll just keep nudging things along in the same direction. You'll never make those big leaps to something new. And that's the same thing in science, that actually if you want to make the big steps forward, you've got to be thinking about things that aren't just sort of agreeing with everybody else. You've got to do that thinking outside the box.
Your father has died, I understand.
Yes.
Did he see you become an astronomer? Does he know you became an astronomer?
He did see me become an astronomer. In fact, he didn't study for a PhD. He did an external degree. So he actually started work straight after school, started working in a museum straight after school, and studied for a degree externally. So he never did a PhD, but did get an honorary degree from London University quite late on in his career. And one of my mother's great prides was when somebody once phoned the house when I was visiting and asked to speak to Dr. Merrifield, and you could hear the pride in her voice when she said, "Which one?" So yes, he did indeed get to see that I became an astronomer, and I also got to go along to his honorary degree ceremony and got to see him get his honorary doctorate in archaeology.
What did he think about astronomy?
He was very suspicious of statistics and mathematics, right? And so actually, he was never very keen on the sciences, because his view was, in archaeology and generally in life, that if you can't see something as obviously true, if there isn't overwhelming weight of evidence, you're never going to believe the mathematics. You can do all the fancy statistical analysis, but if you can't see it's there, you're never going to believe it. So I think he's a bit suspicious of the subjects like astronomy, where we're very much at the mercy of statistics.
Do you think about him on Father's Day or much? Or I guess he died quite a while ago.
It was, a good while ago, in the mid-90s he died, so it's been a fair while now. Father's Day is a good time to think about fathers, yeah.